Good morning, everybody, and a very warm welcome to today's Cision webinar, where we will be exploring how does PR move from evolution to revolution. My name is Flora Edward. I'm a business development. We want to take a look at what that means on a more practical and day-to-day level. To offer their valuable insights, I'm delighted to be joined by three fantastic PR professionals: Kerry Sheehan, Associate Global PR and Comms Director, who's currently consulting at ABRSM; Hannah Kitchener, who's the Senior Account Director at SC10; and Katie Watts, the Senior Press Officer at MoneySavingExpert. It's great to have you all tuning in with us here today as we present from a rather chilly Canary Wharf. We'll be kicking off the webinar with an introductory presentation from each speaker, and after that, we'll dive into a Q&A session with you all. To everybody listening, I hope you enjoyed the discussion, and please do feel free to send your questions through using the Q&A box on the screen, and we'll do our best to answer as many as possible towards the end of the webinar. So with that, I'll hand over to Kerry to introduce herself. Thank you, Kerry.
Thank you. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. Appreciate you're all really busy. So following on from the fantastic CommsCon, as you'll all remember, really fantastic event, great feedback. And hot off the press, there may possibly be plans for a bigger and better 2019, but I'll let the Cision guys talk to you about that as and when. So here today to talk about sort of what's been talked about, quite a lot recently out there, which is, the real return to, well, at least a resurgence to earned media. We're all very au fait, with paid, the peso model, paid, earn and social, but we are seeing, sort of some big waves being made in earned media. And that's at a time, actually, when traditional media, as we all know, is on the rapid decline. So what we think we're going to see over the next 12 months, particularly against the backdrop of the declining traditional media, although we still can't discredit those, is sort of a resurgence of influencer media and marketing, but really sort of targeted micro influencer marketing. And also that word of mouth PR. So to help you to do those kind of things, it's really, really important now, because there are a breadth of different channels emerging out there. Whether or not you're using, Facebook community groups, which is a great place where, news outlets do hang out now. We all know that Facebook apparently is for the older generation now, but don't discredit it, because all the journalists are hanging out there. They're posting stories there just to get some link backs to their websites and traffic, etc. So I would really recommend that you look at those. But it's about making sure that you align, all your messages, whether it's a media release or, brand messaging across multiple channels now, to make sure that it is authentic and there's no sort of error in your messaging, etc. And it's just key. It needs to be framed around a really strong news angle. Competition is tough out there. The journalists don't have time. We don't have time. They know what we're doing. They do need to be our best friends. So we need to really be sort of one step ahead. So basically, the key tip for there is just don't be a one-trick pony on media relations. You'll always have better relations with some rather than the others, but you've got to work really hard at it. And just picking up on that, we are seeing, times move like lightning out there. We're seeing all the major news media outlets, whether it's mainstream media or niche media, fighting for their lives. They're diversifying their products, looking into the digital world. How do they communicate with the masses, let alone us trying to fathom our way through it? But please don't discredit the press release isn't dead. But you do need to diversify in that role and become a real content producer. And this is where it does get a bit tricky, because the lines between marketing, PR and comms have always been blurred, but they are blurring like lightning out there. You need to have your eyes everywhere. And just to pick up on a key fact there, analysis by Cision for the 2018 State of the Media suggests that a journalist still do view the press release as, a trusted form of content, and I think that will continue into 2019. But it's how, again, do we diversify that? We need to add video content, we need to add links, we need to be writing better, shorter, faster, put an infographic in, make their jobs really easy. Any more than 200 words, just don't do it. If they can't lift it, they won't do it. They're fighting, as I said, that losing battle themselves. So just to pick up on that, it's okay, we've got the media release, we've got the top tips, add some video in, and add an infographic in. Also, find out when your journalists are more likely to be receptive to receiving articles and stuff, because they are bombarded just like we all are, and there are some facts and figures out there which are quite recent, which show us that, just bear with me a second, that most journalists prefer to receive 100% of media releases first thing in the morning, because they can obviously then look at their diaries and rearrange what may have been on the news agenda the following evening is kicked off because yours has come in the morning. So don't send it over in the afternoon. You need to get your CEO sign-off at a particular time to suit them, because obviously you want coverage and conversation from them. So what this slide talks just about is how do we obviously move that on for 2019, to really beef up your own media offering. And basically PR, I believe, has to assume a bit of a sort of a partner role. You have to go to where your stakeholders are, which is again what we heard at ComsCon. Go to where those conversations are happening. Again, don't discredit the traditional bits and pieces. And again, influencers, we can't discredit them. There's been a lot of bad press recently, a lot of toing and froing, should we be using them? But I think it's about creating our own brand ambassadors as well. They can be our news conveyors, news messengers, again, which is what we heard about at ComsCon from a couple of the speakers. We need to find out what they're talking about, how they're talking about it, how they want to receive it. And obviously that leads into just what we always do. We need to always continue to be better storytellers and build those relationships as a priority. And I think that will be key for 2019. So we've talked a lot about, obviously, sort of news, being the main focus of earned media. And again, it's something that we heard a lot about at ComsCon. And whilst you will find publications out there, you'll have your favourites, your trusted journo friends that will, do you favours, give you bits and pieces. There are other ways to obviously look at creating that earned content, and it's free, and you can't get any more powerful than word of mouth. So it's about, and again, we spoke about that at ComsCon, just getting more savvy. You need to, tap into feature events, the news behind the news, because human interest, what's really going on, people are just so interested in it. That's just the way it will stay for a long time. Get yourself a calendar. There's lots of tools out there. Cision have got, obviously, a forward-looking tool, which is really helpful. It's been invaluable to me across the years, because, you've got so much going on. Your head can't be everywhere, and it sets up the alerts for you. So that's, again, a really handy tool. So I would, again, urge you to look at, what's out there, what suits you, what can you afford, what can't you afford, and, even if it's a bog standard spreadsheet or something, it's only going to stand you in good stead. And one of the things also, we're very good at, pushing out social messaging on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever else you use, WeChat if you're in foreign markets, etc. But it's actually also a place where journalists hang out. So again, some of the speakers at ComsCon were speaking about we need to interact more with them. And on this slide here, you can see some heavily followed hashtags that are used regularly. So again, I would urge you to set up alerts for those and see where your journalists, off of your tool portals are hanging out, because that could be really easy pickings for you. Just to go back to, we were speaking about influencers. Obviously, they are controversial, but obviously, we want people to be authentic given our messages, and I think we will see a move away from the paid celebrities, just because they do carry a high risk. Obviously, they need to be vetted. A bit of a resurgence and move towards more niche subject matter experts, and that doesn't need to be anyone that's well known. They just need to be, trusted in what they say. So it's about using those, tying that into your social strategy, or just creating them yourself as your ambassadors. Could be staff, could be whoever, but that's a very easy way to earn content. And I couldn't do this, obviously, without mentioning, my baby, so to say, at the moment, which is obviously exploring artificial intelligence in PR. Obviously, colleagues at Cision will know that's one of the biggest changes that's going to impact the way we practice, and that includes the way the media practices as well. So we need to be aware of what is happening out there and all the tools and how that will assist us or inhibit us going forward. And we're already seeing, Cision provides media reporting that has an AI element to it, influencer marketing, identifying them, that has an AI element. What that does do is that frees up time to really dig deep, come up with some good messaging, good stories, and helps us with geo-targeting, which can only be better. But it's about really looking into AI, because the media are using AI. You've got the Press Association, for example. They've got a big project going on at the moment. Which keywords in press releases and media stories are their audiences most receptive to? So we need to be aware of those to be able to put them into what we're sending across. So it's just about us being abreast of what's happening out there. I mean, if anything, it can only enhance your role because you've got that knowledge, and it should also help us with that fake news creep. And as you can see on the slide, just joining the AI in PR conversation, which Cision's regularly been part of. So these slides, just a few more from me before I hand over to my colleague. We're already seeing out there that obviously we're speaking about improving relationships with, journalists, reporters, freelancers, writers, whatever they're called these days. But it's getting harder and harder to tell with the advance, of AI and tech, which articles are written by robo-reporters and human reporters. It's improving by the day. So again, it's just trying to be aware of these things and getting your head around these things as well, because there could be some controversy. Do we need to report back to our organisations with our earned media metrics, or indeed externally? Actually, this was produced by a bot, but that's a conversation for another day. And then very quickly, this is just some examples where we are getting into the automated world, obviously for earned media. Just a slide, again showing sort of media reporting, etc. for our metrics, which again Cision's very good at supporting you with. And the last tip from me, just for earned media, we often, a lot of us work for organisations. I've worked for some very forward-thinking organisations, and I've actually gone back to organisations which need a helping hand, a big helping hand to bring them along with the times. So some of this, whilst it may seem quite foreign to people, I really do suggest, make Alexa, Siri, Google Home, whatever's going to be launched, your friend, and that involves learning about it, how do they work, strategy, content, because it's not going to be long before, you may get a request, or you may know someone that asks you for help with a request. We need to start broadcasting our messaging, our news into the home. That's earned media, because you're right there at the coalface. How do we report on that? How do we SEO that? What keywords do we need to put in? So there's a lot to be thinking about. What is our role in the flow of text when we move over to voice? Voice will be earned media. It won't just be, print and online anymore. So it's how do we embed that into our strategy? Is there an easy answer at the moment? No, but watch this space. And just lastly, before I go, this is on the crpr.co.uk/AI website. It just shows you with the earned media and the PR skills, the amount of automation we're seeing. Currently, the red is the automated areas, stakeholder analysis, media monitoring, reporting, and in 3 to 5 years, we will see more of it go red, if not all of it go red. So it's just a bit of a plea to me, with PR and earned media, you really need to sort of up the game, know your stuff, know about emerging tech out there, tap into tools, etc., because that can only help you go forward.
Great, thank you so much for that, Kerry. Hannah, it's over to you.
Thank you, Flora. So I work at SC10 in London, which is an industrial B2B communications agency, and we specialise in creating meaningful stories and relationships for industrial companies whose work might seem perhaps dry or complex in other hands. And as you can see from my photo, we have a good time while doing it. And we are currently number 106 in the PR Week Top 150, which I think is impressive, if I might say so myself, because we are so small. There are just 10 of us in London, and we also have offices in Chicago and Singapore, which means that we can combine the global knowledge and contacts of a large agency with the high level of customer service of a very small boutique agency. SE10 London office who attended CommsCon, and I think the main topic we were interested in learning more about was measurement. And there was a lot of revolutionary talk, but I think we are still experiencing more of an evolution at SE10 because in the past, for us at SE10, measurement was seen as really an optional add-on for clients, and we used to charge extra for quarterly press tracker reports, and we had a dedicated analyst in Chicago working on those. And for us, we saw it as a source of additional revenue. But now we're finding that it's actually in our best interest to incorporate measurement and reporting into our regular monthly PR retainers, just to prove that they are worth the investment. And this was really brought home to us in the opening presentation by Cision CEO Kevin Ackroyd, when he showed the sheer difference in spending between earned media and paid media. And as you can see on the screen there, with paid media accounting for around 95% of marketing budgets today, owned media around 4.5%, and earned media just 0.5%. And I think that's really quite shocking. And we believe that we do a very good job for our clients and they're happy with us, and we see ourselves together with our clients as a strategic function, but our clients' budgets are being squeezed tighter and tighter, and they've got to justify to their top management and increasingly their purchasing departments as well that we are making a real contribution to their business. And it's a much tougher business environment than ever before. And we are creative people, and the majority of SE10 staff are former journalists, and we naturally want to spend time creating content rather than looking at data, because that's what we enjoy and do best. But we have missed a trick, really, because while we haven't been actively demonstrating the value of our work to the people who do hold the purse strings, I think it's clear that our counterparts who are working with paid media have swooped in to scoop up the budget. So if we are to secure a seat at the strategy table for our clients within their organisations and get them the budget that they deserve for earned media, and also for us as an agency to keep hold of that budget at a time when there's more and more competition from other agencies, then we do need to be much, much better at measuring and proving the value of our earned media work in a way that the top management understands. And this is pure coincidence because the decisions on our tools are made in a Chicago office, but since CommsCon, we've added the media monitoring function to our Cision account, which I'm sure you're pleased to hear. And we've all received our own logins, and we are being trained on how we can all produce reports for our individual clients, so that reporting becomes a part of our regular account management duties rather than a specialist thing that just one analyst in the company does. So another highlight for us at CommsCon was, of course, the keynote speech by David Cameron's former Director of Communications, Sir Craig Oliver. It was really fascinating to hear what an average day is like in the office for a special media advisor at Number 10, and how that role changed with the rise of the 24/7 news cycle and social media. And the growth of social media has presented a considerable opportunity for us at SE10 to apply our storytelling and relationship building skills to new content formats and channels. But there is still a small minority of clients where we haven't been able to explore the full potential yet. And I thought it was really interesting what Sir Craig was saying about companies not fully taking advantage of social media and just seeing it as another way to sell product, because that really chimes with my experience of some of our clients where it's actually the marketing teams that have full control over the social media account, and some of the corporate communications departments that we work with don't get much of a look in. And I'm thinking this must stem back to the fact that we, again, historically haven't been as good at demonstrating our value, and I think it's ironic that PR has a bit of a PR problem in some circles, but I feel we need to have the confidence to fight harder, to share those social media accounts so that instead of just pumping out product information, we can use them to cultivate a community, which is what social media is designed for. And it's funny how at conferences that sometimes what stays with you most is not the presentations themselves, but what is said in the Q&A afterwards. And I was really intrigued by what Tamara Bennett, head of media relations at Virgin, was saying in the session on storytelling, that Virgin doesn't issue press releases anymore, that they create a video or a blog and then they alert journalists to that digital content. And the communications landscape has changed dramatically, but like Kerry was saying earlier, I still believe that press releases have a place. And SE10 was founded by two former industrial trade journalists 15 years ago, and they saw a gap in the market for well-written press releases, and that was how the company started, because as journalists, their editorial teams were getting smaller and smaller, and they had pages to fill with less time to do so. And I think that's probably even more the case now, that these trade magazines, they've got websites and social media accounts and everything that they need to populate as well. So we try to write press releases and produce other content in a way that editors can literally just cut and paste them, and they do. And we really pride ourselves on our journalistic knowledge and writing skills and content generation skills, and I think that's one of the reasons we have such a good pickup rate. And working with industrial business-to-business companies we do, crafting a press release means that we can shape stories in the way we want to and keep them on message, especially when the information is quite complex. So I'm not going to advise our clients that we stop issuing press releases, but I do see the benefit of taking a digital-first approach, as all the campaigns shown by the CommsCon storytelling panel did, that had a video at the heart, which then gave rise to other content, which again I think is very similar to what Kerry was saying. So the fact remains that the scope of our work has really, really broadened during the 6 years that I've been at SE10, and media coverage is just one aspect, and we're increasingly working a lot with owned and shared media too, a little bit of paid as well now. So the way we plan and run our campaigns should reflect this balance, and I wouldn't want any of our journalist friends to think that we're going to neglect them from now on, because that's certainly not the case. But we are shifting our focus slightly in the way we approach content and considering how we can achieve the best impact online first. I would also like to say that I personally have been making a conscious effort to attend more industry events this year, and I think it can be hard in a busy agency environment to justify time away from billable client work, but I think it's really important to pull yourself away from the grindstone sometimes to get inspiration and new ideas, or even just confirmation that you are doing the right thing. And I can honestly say I've learned something from every event I've attended this year, and I feel that my work and consequently my clients have benefited from that as well. So I'd like to say thank you to Cision for organising CommsCon. I thought it was an outstanding event, and I really hope that you do run another one next year.
So do we. Thank you very much. That's great, Hannah. Thank you. So last but not least, let's hear from you, Katie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Flora. I'm Katie, and I work for MoneySavingExpert.com. I'll just give you a little bit of background. MSE is the UK's biggest consumer website. It's founded by a man called Martin Lewis, who you may have seen on This Morning, Good Morning Britain. He's got his own TV show, which was on last night. I actually came into MSE from agency side, so it was a really interesting transition for me, partly because of the idea of going in-house and seeing it from the client side, but also because we are doing PR for journalism. Money Saving Expert is editorial first, and it's protected by a really unique editorial code, which in practice means that we don't advertise ourselves. People can't pay us to push products or stories on our site, and everything, every product, every credit card, energy company, every piece of information that's on the site is what's in the best interest of the consumer. So it's been a really enlightening experience for me working from a newsroom. So I'm doing PR inside a newsroom, not only because It's helped me to understand what journalists want better, but also because my client, my bosses, so to speak, are invested in good stories and quality coverage rather than quantity, which I know even to this day, and we talk about it year on year, is a huge challenge in a client-agency relationship. They always kind of want to make sure they're getting bang for their buck. And the easiest way to tell that is in reach and in coverage volume.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, in the last 24 hours, I've checked, we've had at least 25 completely unsuitable press releases and 5 requests to place a guest post, which is something we don't generally do unless it's from a regulator or somebody very independent. So I would like to reiterate, it is completely important to understand the media and where you're placing things. For example, at the conference, in the What Journalists Want piece, Nada Farood from The Mirror, I know that she has a page 8 to fill every day. Page 8, full page, what can live on there, how many bullet points it needs, and roughly how many words. Understanding that need and where something's going to fit on that journalist beat is really, really important. So just to show you a little bit about MSE, as I said, we're the UK's biggest consumer website, and here's some idea of the traffic that we get. And as you can see, that's not really a problem for us. As we're not pushing our own products, you'd think that our primary aim of PR would be traffic, but it isn't. Actually, we can summarise the point of my MSE press office in what I think is one question. How do people who don't read MSE access that same information? If you don't read MSE and you're not financially savvy and you're not using a financial touch point, for example, your energy deal is running out, how else would you find out that you're being ripped off or due compensation or have access to a benefit that you didn't know about? And that's what we aim to do in the press office. We try and help people who aren't using that financial touch point. And that's where our immense amount of knowledge and expertise comes in handy. We currently connect with the media through our expertise, and we have a roster of 10 expert spokespeople, including Martin Lewis, across all categories. And we've invested our time heavily in broadcast PR, especially to make them regular experts on the likes of BBC Breakfast and ITV Lunchtime News. When something goes wrong, for example, earlier this year, TSB had a massive IT meltdown, which caused lots of people a lot of problems, not least some of them were told that they were dead. All sorts of things happened. It was awful. And that trust and presence then allows us to get a foot in the door when our investigations and our news work do reveal something else. So when they reveal a new way that a consumer is losing out, that we want to tell people about. And we talked about a little bit about influencer marketing and influencer PR. Instead of using other influencers, what we do is try and turn our experts, and that is what we are, experts, into influencers themselves, so that members of the public start following them as well. It's quite nice. One of our spokespeople, Megan, was on BBC Breakfast earlier this year, and now she's started to get a following of her own, and people are saying on Twitter that they trust her now, which is really exciting for us. And just one more thing before I move on. We invested in an ISDN line in our office. It's a radio line that's broadcast quality, and it is the best investment we have ever made because as an expert, we are always on hand, on call, at the drop of a hat with 5 minutes notice if needed. And that was reiterated. A couple of years ago, I went to a Gorkana event with the Today programme, and they said that Sir Martin Sorrell did the same thing. He was always available with high broadcast quality at the drop of a hat. Again, understanding what the media wants and needs. But the real backbone of MSE is our campaigns, and that's what I came to CommsCon looking for, inspiration for PR for our campaigns. And I'm not talking about PR campaigns here, I'm talking about the ones that make a real difference and change the law or make a real difference to consumers' lives. But this is also where our challenges are most visible. For example, how do people who disengage from money access money content? They don't read the money pages. They don't care about money. They don't have the time to worry about money. How do we help them in a different way? Where do you find them when they don't access traditional media? And also, those audiences aren't our usual audience on MoneySavingExpert.com. For example, students aren't our normal audience on MoneySavingExpert. people with severe mental impairments. On the top left there, that's our campaign for a council tax discount that's very little known for people who have a severe mental impairment. We don't like the name, but that's what it's called. So finding where to get those people is a real challenge for our press office, and where to access them when they're not reading money news. And I'm also going to throw mention to one more thing, which is fake news. We've built our expertise and our brand, and that's come as a bit of a double-ended sword, because now scammers are leeching off our hard-earned reputation and scamming people out of a lot of money. And that's also a challenge for us in the year ahead. How do we engage with tech companies to try and put blanket bans on content that isn't real? In fact, it's even bigger than that, because it's going to require regulation on the internet, which is a huge step and is going to take years, unfortunately. So some of my takeaways from CommsCon and what I'm bringing to my strategy in 2019, I'm going to start with something that Peter Hennigan from Lad Bible said that really resonated with me. Excuse my French in advance. He said, young society gives a fuck. They don't just read and regurgitate information anymore. They talk back. And consumers are smarter now to PR and marketing. They can see when it's been placed, and we need to be more receptive to that. So why are we still setting ourselves reach-based objectives and proving our value that way, especially in client-agency relationships? The messages that last and remain in people's minds are the ones that they really invest in, not the ones with the highest volumes of coverage and reach. So let's start setting more thoughtful objectives. How does that talkability manifest itself for that particular campaign? So for Peter Hennigan, it was the pub test. He called it the pub test. So is it something you would talk about with your friends at the pub? Is it how much response has a story that you've placed in the Times got? How many people are commenting on that? Is it how much those pieces of coverage have been shared? Can you look at Google Analytics and see if people are then coming to MSE from, say, WhatsApp? Can you measure that talkability in a different way? Is it visibility on the ground? Downloads of information, for example, that can be used at, say, local dementia groups, if that's, the financial touch point that you're reaching. And it's important to analyse before and after if you've then shifted the perceptions. At the moment, I know it's something we don't measure very well. Of course, that's an objective, but, we need to see how that lasting effect of our PR is performing and how it's affecting people. Again, I'm just going to bring back to Tamara Bennett from Virgin. I also wanted to talk about the same point she did say, and I think it was just a little nugget in the Q&As, but she did say that she's pointing people and pointing journalists to Virgin's content rather than relying entirely on press releases. And I agree with the two women sitting next to me that it's not completely dead, but as a PR for a publisher, it really rang true to me. I could be doing more with the mounds of content that I have access to: original analysis, data, investigations, video, case studies. We've been trying to give journalists finished products in our press releases for a long time, rather than collaborating and creating something together that will work for their audience. It was echoed again. Peter Hennigan talked about B-roll. There's nothing wrong with B-roll. You don't have to give them a finished video. The people from Glamour and Pink News as well, they talked about partnerships, and that's what they really value. Give them options and access in a more personalised way, and create something with them rather than for them. And I think that's something that we'd like to do a little bit more of in 2019, and has worked really well for some of our campaigns in the past. And just finally, what is the aim of all this PR, and what are you going to report to the boardroom later, and what do you think makes the project a success? Is it a change in the law? And for us, I think we want to concentrate on those meaningful goals as a barometer of how well PR has worked in the mix with other parts of the ecosystem that is MSE, whether that's, if you've got a product, whether that's your commercial goals or your public affairs work, how has PR contributed to a bigger change? take Lab Bible's Trash Aisles as an example. If you weren't at CommsCon, go on Vimeo and look at their case study video for Trash Aisles. It's extraordinary work. They basically got lots of people to become citizens of a trash island in the Pacific Ocean, got celebrities signed up to the cause to be the foreign secretary and so on. Their objectives were to get people to sign up, to become a citizen, to share the story. How many people commented? They actually really focused on that. But the goal was a mass cleanup of the beaches, that meaningful purpose. And for MSE, that's really important because our PR is supposed to help people. It's not there to drive traffic to the website. My big takeaway was that PR success at the moment, and we have struggled with this for years, is so tightly linked to coverage, but we forget it's linked to the rest of what you're trying to achieve. And a good PR campaign, I think, will go much further than just the coverage that you get.
Great. Thank you all so much. That was fascinating. Really good to hear a bit more about your day-to-day roles as well. And I'm really pleased, actually, from Cision's point of view, that you all had so many good takeaways from the event. It was really nice, actually, to come back and think about some of the talks that we heard. So thank you. So it's now time to kick off our Q&A. We have got some questions from those of you watching elsewhere, but I've also got some of my own, which I'm keen to ask you. So I think we'll just start with Kerry first. But just as an overall, how much has your day-to-day role changed over the last few years as the industry has changed?
For me, it's changed massively. I'm an ex-national news journalist, news editor. Down at Wapping, I can say for my sins now, all these years on. So I've seen it from both sides. And as whereas a couple of years ago, you could just send a press release or even have a telephone chat with them or go and meet them, and you'd get some coverage and they'd be quite upfront with you. Yeah, you're in. It's changed like lightning. The competition is really fierce now, and also their demands have changed, obviously, as the media has had to diversify their offering. Like I said previously, they're all trying to work out how do they stay afloat. Well, that's through a digital offering, but how are they going to future-proof that going forward? Well, it's video, it is that B-roll footage, it's the news behind the news. So we need to get savvier. Yes, it is about content, but what is that content that we need to produce to get the coverage, whether it is for measurement results or purpose or values, campaign messaging, etc. So it goes back to what I said before. It's very short, it's very snappy. It is a link to a video. It could be a couple of links to different lengths of videos, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, 3 minutes, a few outtakes. Just have that chat with them and see how they like to see it. But also, owned media could also be a tweet that actually is linked back, etc. Yeah. So it's just about sort of knowing where they're going with it, as well as knowing what you can produce in line with your organisation or brand identity, etc.
Yeah. Thank you, Kerry. And the same with you, Hannah. Is there one change that you can kind of pinpoint that has really, changed your day-to-day role in the last couple of years?
Yeah, definitely. For me, it's the breadth of skills that you have today. And I mentioned earlier how it's really important to be comfortable with data, but also in producing content. Now you have to be able to film and edit short videos. You have to be able to do basic graphic design, create simple infographics. You have to know about SEO. You have to be a whiz on social media. Have an understanding of online content management systems. You have to be able to do everything. And I think that's probably the same whether you work at an agency and the clients want to get the best value for money. Like if they fly you out to an event somewhere, they want you to be able to do as much as possible while you're there. But I think also if you work in-house, you have the ambition to do all these sorts of things, but you don't necessarily have the budget or the resources to do it. So you've got to be able to produce all of these different types of content yourself.
Yeah. And with you, Katie, with paid, owned and earned media all becoming much more integrated, how important is it becoming for you at MSE to kind of work with your other colleagues in those departments, to sort of bring to life campaigns and ideas?
Yeah, well, we don't do paid media, so that wipes that off my expertise list, and that's what keeps us uniquely independent. It may not have worked for everyone, but at the time that MSE entered the market 15 years ago, that became our USP. But our owned media is a really important part of what we do, and we publicise our investigations. And actually, you guys have talked about having a broad skill set, but the way that we approach it is that we are experts in what we do, and that includes our job roles. So I will never try and complete an investigation because I'm not an experienced journalist, and our news team is. And our video, likewise with our video and social teams, I will always take their expertise first. So while I think we have to have an understanding in our roles of all of them, but there is still value in sort of being an expert in things. For example, I'm more of an expert in media relations than I am in social media.
Yeah. And what about with you, Kerry, in terms of that? Do you think paid, owned and earned media are becoming more integrated, and how's that changing your role?
Sorry, excuse me, voice is going. I'd absolutely agree. It goes back to that omni-channel approach. You need to kind of spread it out, make sure it's consistent, obviously, so authenticity is key, because obviously everybody accesses your message, your campaign, whatever it is you're trying to engage about in different ways. You're not going to find everybody in the one place. But going back to what Katie mentioned from CommsCon about on average only 5% of budgets is spent on earned media, I think there's a lot we can do there because it is free at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Save for staff costs. It's about getting creative, and it's about just trying to create that word of mouth PR, which is so powerful, just to keep the conversation going. That's where I see it going. Yeah.
So I suppose, Hannah, with budgets in mind, do you think you would see sort of other agencies, ad agencies and owned media, do you see them as rivals, or do you think they're more sort of compatriots all trying to get across the same message? Or, because you're all competing for your slice of the budget pie, I suppose. So how do you think you see them?
I think we do see them as rivals, and also with everything becoming more integrated. I mean, at SC10, we've previously done a lot of owned media work as well, but we're now also getting a little bit into paid media. And just with working with our trade magazines and placing adverts, it makes sense because we already have the relationship with those titles on an editorial level, and it really helps us to make the most of the opportunities. So
I don't know about you, Hannah, but when I was in agency, I used to find quite a lot that the PR agency came last. For example, if you're working on a new integrated ad campaign that conveyed, a purpose or a message for that company, they would get all of that work out of the way first and end up with PR and have brought all the rest of the product to them in advance. So I think it's a shame, and I think that clients especially need to be involving PR much earlier on.
Yeah, although I agree, but I also disagree, because what I've seen out there from some agency work is we are seeing a bit of resurgence to some agencies, even putting PR back into their titles. There's a lot of for and against discussion out there at the moment, and also what we're seeing in some agencies, particularly at the higher end, and again, it's because they've got the budget, because they've got the money. PR is starting to come first, because it is the PR people that are now expected to come up with a solution to the problems, whether it's a service or a product, rather than just be, the message carriers, the content producers. So it is interesting times.
Yeah. Yeah. And Hannah, you mentioned that you've just started doing sort of media monitoring and things at the agency. What kind of effect do you think that new technology, I know that's not a new technology exactly, but what kind of effect do you think that will have on the industry?
I think it's going to have a very positive effect. I think we will be able to be more efficient in what we do, and also, as I said in my section, about demonstrating the value of what we do. And there are other technologies as well that have helped us to produce content. Going back to my point about having to have so many different skills nowadays, with filming and editing videos, it's tough. But on the other hand, it's never been easier to do that before. Like just with your iPhone, you can go out and shoot some footage that is good enough. And we've also been using other tools that can help us create good graphic design, even though we are not specialist designers. Because there are some times when it doesn't need to be outstanding quality. It needs to be quick and, of a decent level, but sometimes speed and immediacy is more important.
What do you think on that, Kerry?
I would agree with that. I think from what I'm seeing is, yes, there will always be the case for specialists, but I think we are seeing more of a move towards specialist generalists, should I say, because quite often, if you are a PR worth your salt, so to say, you can very quickly pick up a sector or an industry. There'll always be times where we need to call on real in-depth specialists, but that's kind of where I see it going. Yeah. You can't be a one-trick pony anymore. The expectations, demands are getting more and more. Like as my colleague here has just said, you've got to know everything and anything now.
Yeah. So, Katie, I know that you had some amazing stats coming to MSC in terms of traffic and things, but how do you currently measure what you do in the press office, and how do you think that's going to change going forward?
For the past year, we've been measuring what we do mainly on the proactivity of it. So we look at whether it's one of our original pieces and how we've managed to get that coverage and where and why, and then where it's commentary. For example, I talked about our expert, and when something goes wrong, Ryanair this year has been a godsend to our press office after many strikes and issues and ignoring the regulator. And so we look at how much of our coverage is commentary, like that as well. Name checks, which for us aren't necessarily a bad thing, because we have tools on our site that are free and easy to use. So a name check of that tool, in an article is not necessarily a bad thing. For example, they might say there might be a general currency article where to get the best holiday money, and it will point to Travel Money Max, which is our currency cash best rates tool. So we're looking at things that way at the moment. But as I said, going into 2019 and with an increased focus on our campaign successes, I think we'd like to look a little bit more at what are we trying to get people to do, and above reach and coverage levels, what do we want them to do with that information? Do we want them to talk about it, raise awareness? Do we want them to act on it? And try and look at creative ways of measuring that for individual campaigns, being more specific about those different the different projects we've got going on.
Yeah. And Hannah, sometimes media relations can be a kind of spray and pray system. Do you think that communicators will often or begin to adopt more targeted approaches now that we've got sort of more data information and things?
Definitely. I thought it was really interesting to hear at Cision about your new tool that you're developing, where you can overlap the audience with the influencer, so that it might become apparent that a particular journalist who has a smaller reach, but what they write about is more relevant to your audience, so it becomes apparent that they're a better choice for you. So I think we will be able to be definitely more targeted in what we do.
Yeah, and Kerry, how do you go about sort of targeting the right people and the right audiences in your role?
I think it's about having the help of a lot of tools. I think the day where we do things on paper, sort of keeping a list for ourselves, whilst that's still beneficial, are gone, because as I say, the landscape is changing out there like lightning. Who's a good influencer today may not be tomorrow, or it might not be the right one. So it is about right time and place. But just to pick up on what colleagues have said, it's also about finding purpose, in sort of, what you're trying to do with these influencer or ambassadors and in your message carrying. I think we're seeing a bit of a shift away from, whether it's straight promotion or a straight sales pitch or a human interest story. There has to be real purpose and meaning in it for people these days, which is quite exciting, 2019. I think it might sort of help us move away from this age-old thing, what is PR?
Yeah, especially with B2C, I think that consumers are a lot smarter to that stuff now. You can't just go, here's some stats, 60% of people get their house deposit from the bank of mum and dad, and by the way, we've got a mortgage product. Like, I think consumers can read a story and smell PR now. Yeah. So we need to be a little bit more, like you say, purposeful. What are we trying? Why are we giving them this information? And that is a battle sometimes, like I've said, in client agency relationships, where the client wants you to tell their story, especially if they're selling a product. But actually, you're gonna have that conversation where you're explaining that this isn't news for a journalist. Absolutely. Or they might not get that product into the article, because you've given them the interesting stuff in the stats, and they won't add that in the space that they've got. Yeah. And all three of you, when you were sort of in your presentations, you all discussed influencer marketing and how that's totally changing the work that you do. Hannah, how do you think influencer marketing is going to change over the next couple of years? Do you think it's going to continue on the rise as it has been, or are people going to get, as you say, more savvy to this sort of form of PR?
Well, we've only really been working with influencers for about the last year and a half, so still a relatively new thing to us, but the way we work with them is very different to the traditional journalist. So for the traditional journalist, it's mostly about very high-level business strategy, but with the influencers, it's really product-focused, and they love to, for example, an excavator, like you saw me in all my photos, they love to get in the cab, try it out, film all the controls, which the traditional journalists are less interested in doing. They're more interested in interviewing the CEO, for example.
Great. We've got some questions from the audience. So this is from Rebecca Meller, who's at Highland Marketing, and she said, in your experience, what metrics do board members listen to in terms of demonstrating ROI? So Katie, should we start with you there?
It's a really interesting one for us because we're part of a bigger group of companies, which includes Money Supermarket and Travel Supermarket, but MoneySavingExpert is editorially ring-fenced. So we have 2 other press offices in our company, and the board is looking at 3 sets of PR. We don't measure them in the same way, but similar. We look at volumes of coverage. We kind of separate out Martin Lewis coverage as well, because his work on This Morning and Good Morning Britain is all under his own personal banner. Okay. So we try as much as possible to separate out what MSC is achieving. But what they really listen to are those key flagship programs at the moment. And going forward, I think they're really more interested in seeing what effect we've had on the consumer. As a group of companies, our mission statement is to save households $2 billion. So that's the kind of stuff they want to see. How has our PR helped us to achieve that wider mission? Yeah.
Great. And Kerry, what do you think in that one? What kind of metrics are board members listening to?
I don't think it's ever a one-size-fits-all. Where I'm working at the moment, we're based in 93 countries and counting. Don't ask me to name them all. And obviously, they've all got their different cultures, and people don't report back in the way that you'd like them to, etc. But apart from the usual, reach, engagement, etc., I think it's very important to obviously highlight sentiment and put some narrative around that, because ROI is a difficult one. And cost doesn't always equal value, so it's about how do you show your value, and more importantly, the added value. And for me, that's through continuing conversations. Yeah. So it is a difficult one. There's not one size fits all. There are the usual metrics and stuff, which again, Cision can help you with. But for me, it's about showcasing value against cost.
Great. And what about you, Hannah?
Well, I think they would love to see an impact on sales. And we're not there just yet. And of course, not everything that we do ends in a sale, because there are many different aspects to in the work. But I think if we could demonstrate that ROI in that one area on sales, I think that would lend us a lot more credibility to everything else that we do. It's perhaps more difficult to measure.
Yeah. Great. And we've got another question. This is from Melissa Orchard at Champions UK, and she said, how do you effectively report the value of online coverage to your clients if a monetary value cannot be given in the way that it can for print coverage? So I suppose in regards to clients, I think that's probably for you, Hannah, in an agency point of view.
Difficult question. Sorry. Because I think we have moved now onto focusing on the online coverage that we get, because it is easier to report on, because previously we used to subscribe to 10 magazines, get them into the office and just look through for the clips. But really, whether those were the best 10 magazines or not is difficult to say. So we'd really like to be able to show that the online coverage is sending people to our clients' websites where they are looking for more information, or requesting a quote, or in some cases maybe even making a sale. That would be ideal, to be able to show some sort of sales funnel from looking at that online coverage through the client's website and their behaviour on there.
Great. Kerry, do you have anything to add on that?
Again, it's a difficult one, because again, monetary cost doesn't always equal value to the organisation. But for me, this is obviously where sentiment comes in quite heavily, and obviously that links back to reputation. So I think, depending on the narrative that you can put around it, you can start to show value that weighs quite higher than actual physical monetary cost.
Yeah, and Katie, what about you?
So if I call my bosses my clients in this instance, but online coverage is a really interesting one, because you can show a value in it. For example, less this year because it wasn't as important, but last year for Black Friday, we placed a lot of online coverage, and that ended up with mentions of Money Saving Expert and Black Friday in the same article, pushing our Black Friday guide to the top of SEO. And our SEO team was able to say to us, and we invested in taking some time with them, to say that that PR had a positive impact online on people searching Black Friday deals and getting MSE and seeing our coverage. So I think that SEO analysis is also a really good place, because it's not just on links. You may have seen there was this big Twitter spat with Deirdre Hipwell, who was saying, she was sick of PRs asking for links. It's not just links that attribute themselves to a good ranking on Google. It's also mentions. So I think PR is really important online for sort of driving people to your site.
Yeah, just to pick up on that, I would strongly advocate that every media release that goes out, whether it is via email or via an online portal, absolutely should be SEO'd and listed with the keywords that that the journalists or their online portals or bots or whatever it is are going to pick up on going forward.
Yeah, great. And we've just got a couple of minutes left. So last quick question, which is for Kerry about AI as your prime topic. Karina said, I've only seen discussions around cost reduction for companies because of robots that will help, or robots being able to simplify our day-to-day routine at work. But what else in PR?
Okay, excuse me, my voice is going this morning. So very quickly, our research shows that the robots aren't coming to take over our jobs anytime soon. We do have some research online, which was backed by the Global Communications Alliance. I'm quite happy to have a chat with you if you want to contact me outside of this webinar. But where AI really will come in for us is about helping us to get more savvy with our roles, identifying who we need to speak to. And I do believe we will get to a place, where the Cision have got a tool in the making, or someone else has out there, and we will get an alert. This is the right time to speak to the right people in the right place, and this is the right messaging, as well as all the home voice products, etc. But I appreciate it is a bit of a minefield. But if you want to contact me for more, I'm more than happy to have a chat with you.
Great, thank you. And thank you all so much to our wonderful speakers for all your insights today. And of course, a big thanks to everyone who's joined us. So for updates regarding our upcoming events, do keep an eye on our website and Twitter via @CisionUK. And from all of us at Cision, we hope you have a very wonderful Christmas and a joyous New Year. And we hope you join us for lots more events in 2019. Thank you.